trolling Senator Elizabeth Warren as a snake, and in post after post, labeling Mayor Pete Buttigieg a rat. Two victims of this tell CNN they were so afraid of the online attacks they faced, they don't even want us to describe the circumstances for fear it would start up again. They both just questioned the politics of Bernie Sanders in a public setting, and their personal lives were exposed and attacked.
Well, just what Nick said, I think that's right. I mean, there isn't a Democratic establishment anymore. There's not even a Democratic Party anymore. The Democratic Party is a meaningless notion that the party, like the Republican Party, has been hollowed out and privatized to a large extent. There are Democratic elites, and so when we're talking about the Democratic establishment, we're really talking about a number of, a bunch of people that Nick also knows well, which really means Democratic donors.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
This election is the most important in the modern history of this country.
The election in 2020, without hyperbole, is going to be the most important election this country has undergone in over 100 years. Not a joke.
This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot.
There are just 8 days left in what is the most important election of our lifetime.
Where did you guys come to a conclusion about why Clinton had such a hard time just owning that she did something wrong with the email server?
You know, I know that Russia and other forces would love us to have a debate. This is exactly what they want. They want us to have a debate about the internal structure of Hillary's campaign, what's true, what's not true. And I'm just not going to play that. I'm sorry.
We came, we saw, we died.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It's like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
You know, people have said, if you look at, for example, the heat that ended up around the bend the knee of Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. Many smart people have said it actually was not a thing. The Russian bots started taking out. Yes.
But I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should
this
be
is
running.
Not about.
If you're like me, one of the millions suffering from pain caused by migraine, Nurtec ODT may help. It's the only medication that can treat a migraine when it strikes and prevent migraine attacks.
Trump and the Republicans lose on Tuesday, and if they lose badly, it's not going to be because of the left, whatever that means. It's not because of the 50 Antifa black mask guys who roam around the United States breaking windows and committing mayhem, most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Rudy Giuliani, there's only three things he mentioned in a sentence, a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean...
I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today.
And I went to Wall Street in December of 2007, before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President. Bye.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
I can't do it.
We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, welcome to episode 151 of the Politics Show. Much like me, you are clearly not a soccer fan because the World Cup game is going right now, and a lot of people are probably watching that. My hope is, as a non-soccer fan, and whatever, I watched a couple of the games. I'm not like a soccer hater or anything. It's definitely more enjoyable for my money than baseball, which I think is kind of boring. However, I would like to see Spain win because of their politics, because they're anti-genocide country.
It's beautiful, man.
But to get on with things here, it's never a dull week in politics in the 2020s. They're keeping us entertained out here, to say the very least. So we got a lot to cover. And last week there was a lot of stuff that I had so much stuff I couldn't even get to all of it. So this week we are back at war with Iran. The president accused China of stealing the 2020 election. Russia is crushing Ukraine, but the media is saying the opposite. The Charlie Kirk thing is unraveling. And cameramen are not supposed to film women's asses during sporting events anymore. That's just a brief summary of a lot of the amazing stories we're going to be diving into on today's episode of the Politics Show. Thank you for joining me. And everything continues to get more expensive. There doesn't seem to be any end to the loss of workable jobs. AI continues to rise. But we continue to march forward towards something. Is it the edge of a cliff? I don't know. Let's hope not. And if it is, let's hope that when we land, we can brush ourselves off and walk away with at least a little bit of dignity. The president of the United States, President Trump, just saying that is surreal still. Then again, it's really not. Think about our history. Think about Ronald Reagan. I remember when Obama was president. A lot of the conservatives would make fun of him for being a celebrity. That was like a big thing with them. Like, oh, Obama's just a celebrity. In other words, like, he's a president people liked. And I always had to laugh at that because I'm like, yo, Ronald Reagan, you guys' pinnacle of presidents, was an actor. So shut up. A Hollywood actor from California. I love these conservatives in there. California's so terrible. That's why we love Ronald Reagan, the Hollywood actor who was the governor of California. That's why the Democrats are trying to push Gavin Newsom, too. That's how far politics in America has come. It's just come full circle to the point where now the quote unquote left is emulating the right of, 50 years ago now. Okay, 40. It was the early 80s when Reagan was elected, so it's closer to 50, I think. But the president gave a speech on Thursday night that a few of the networks refused to air, and I will say that I don't think that's heroic. CNN refusing to air this. They could just, why not air it and, fact check it or debunk it or rebut it? You don't get brownie points for ignoring what the president says just because you disagree with it. But isn't CNN also owned by the Ellisons? Has anyone ever considered CNN partial or measured or fair in any way whatsoever? Anyway, good question, but so here is Trump accusing China of stealing the 2020 election. Let's listen to a little bit of what our beloved president has to say here.
Show that over a period of years, they show that over a period of years, starting during the 2020 election cycle, the People's Republic of China carried out what is believed to be the largest compromise of election data in history, resulting in China's illicit acquisition of 220 million U.S. voter files. That information includes names, addresses, phone numbers, political party preferences, and other sensitive data that would be needed to register to vote and engage in other nefarious activities, which is exactly what was happening. This data loss presents an unprecedented election security nightmare. The intelligence even shows that China assigned a data exploitation unit specifically to this new project. Compounding the travesty, the second set of documents we are releasing reveals that members of the deep state, very, very famous group of people, many cases, in our intelligence agency work to actively suppress and downplay.
Hold on. I gotta rewind that. Let's play that again. This is Trump in his
the deep state, very, very famous group of people, many cases, in our intelligence agency work to actively suppress and downplay information about the extent. In our intelligence agency, famous group of people, many cases of the deep state, very, very famous group of people, many cases, in our intelligence agency work to actively suppress and downplay information.
Okay, hold on a second. My neighbor's dog is silent all day long until I get on stream. And then he's out here like laying right in front of my door crying about something. God knows what. Probably the owner's gone or something. Anyway, I had to go tell Coco to shut up. But this is hilarious. The deep state, this whole thing. And this was China's response here. China rejects President Trump's election interference claim as groundless and entirely fabricated. We have no interest in interfering in U.S. elections and have never done so. So there you have it. That's the case so far. The deep state thing has to be an effort from where I'm sitting to make people think that the term is just stupid because, now Trump's citing it as if he's not running the government and the deep state isn't, under his complete control at this point. So now that he controls the government, they're making him, and this is my personal conspiracy theory, take it for what it's worth. They're making him look like an ass to discredit him. And they're doing a great job of it. That's my theory. They know he would face plant in Iran, which is why they convinced him to start that war. And now he looks like a gigantic fool there. And so this kind of stuff, I didn't have enough time to prep this, but I see this kind of thing happening with, for example, a story just came out about Tulsi Gabbard's brother is like a child molester now. And as soon as I saw that, I'm just like, okay, this does not sit right with me. This reeks of like effort to discredit. She just exposed Ukrainian biolabs. She just exposed a bunch of stuff on her way out. And you can stuff like this, like let me play this one more time. This is just too funny. Stuff like this right here.
Shows that China signed a data exploitation. Compounding the travesty, the second set of documents we are releasing reveals that members of the deep state, very, very famous group of people.
When you see stuff like that, it's like this desperate. You can kind of detect that there's this battle going on behind the scenes with, there is elements, I think, of the Trump administration still to this day that, like the Steve Bannon types, who could see where the United States was heading and were genuinely trying to fix stuff. But then you get in and there's all these corruptible influences that are already in place to wrest the wheel from you. And I think that's what you see right here with this like, oh, the deep state, oh, the very famous group of people. Yeah, that's who's doing this right now to make you look like an ass, Trump. And I thought this was really funny because it reminded me instantly of the Democrats. And, a lot of people obviously said this, but I just want to take a trip down memory lane here, as I like to do sometimes. Where's my memory?
Russia interfered with our election, attacked
on.
on
This up correctly. I want to take a trip down memory lane here. Where's my sound effect? And remember what the Democrats said back in 2018.
Russia interfered with our election, attacked our democracy for the sole purpose of artificially placing someone at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. They were successful. Russia interfered with our election, attacked our democracy for the sole purpose of artificially placing someone at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. They were
successful, y'all. They were successful, y'all. Like, that's Hakeem Jeffrey. Oh my God, what a pathetic dude that guy is. What I think is even more funny about this is how it's RNC Research that posted it. That's now out here going like, oh, China, come on, guys. But the reality is China doesn't even have to do anything. They can just sit back and watch as we implode. They can just sit back and enjoy the decline from a distance, right? As they enjoy the lovely, modern, sophisticated society that they've created for themselves. And the sad reality is that this China did it thing is really PR to cover for who really controls the U.S. government. Ah, yes. It's China buying our presidents, controlling Congress through lobbyists, tricking Americans into war on behalf of China through mass media. Look at all these presidents kissing the Great Wall, as we know, is a very common thing. Every president has to make that pilgrimage to China and kiss the Great Wall. So, of course, you can see, too, from this screenshot of the RNC, the direct influence of China in the ruling political parties. Take a look at this shot. The Chinese influence here is just on full display. It's disgusting how obvious this ruse has been all along, China. We see you, China. It's the stars, not the moon. The crescent with the sickle. Sorry, that was a dumb joke. Then, of course, we have this evidence of the Chinese celebrating the 9/11 tragedy. Here are the Chinese back on 9/11. Breaking, the FBI releases never-before-seen footage of Chinese nationals dancing during the 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center. Sources say they now have overwhelming evidence of China's involvement on 9/11 and state that another attack is imminent unless we ban TikTok. This is from 2024, from when they were trying to ban TikTok because China was our mortal enemy. But this is where I think it gets really good, and it's when the pandemic thing comes into play, because clearly there was a very visible and notable China connection during that event. Let's call it that pandemic event. And so Russell Brand here, shares this tweet from Polymarket that says China claims they never interfered in U.S. elections, and this MAGA lady responds, they still haven't admitted to the COVID lab leak either. So, and I had to chime in and add my 2 cents and say, much like everything the USA does, this was also outsourced to China. COVID was an American project. They just made it cheap in China. And that pretty much sums it up. It's people want to blame China for the economic decline of the United States. It's our companies that sent the manufacturing overseas to China. We used to be the manufacturing powerhouse of the world. And then we let our, business leaders outsource everything to a foreign country for cheap labor. And now the U.S. military is complete. Well, this isn't because of the manufacturing thing, but we're dependent on China for a lot of our weapons. So it's interesting that they're trying to set up for a war with China when, it's pretty obvious that we need China for any war we're gonna wage right now, unless some big things change in the very near future. So then I saw this clip circulating, and I really understood why the rhetoric against China is amping up. Listen to this. Let's just
First of all, I want to tell the Israeli government and the Israeli leaders that the moment Israel uses a nuclear warhead against any other country, including against Iran, it will be the demise of Israel as a country, as a state. First of all, I want to.
So there you go. That to me pretty much sums up why China is suddenly in the crosshairs of the U.S. government, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of a foreign country. Let's be honest. Nothing Americans want the government to do has been done in decades. I was disgusted with America long before Trump was elected, though. Trump just tore the mask off the escapade, the whole fake thing, and exposed it. And there's no one on the internet that I think kind of voices my total contempt for the current government or just the U.S. government as a whole better than Nick Cruz. And I wanted to share Nick Cruz's take on this China thing. Listen, here's Nick.
Donald Trump just gave the most pathetic speech in the history of the presidency as he complains that China...
Pathetic is a great adjective for that speech.
...is the real reason why he's so unpopular.
In 2019, the Chinese government's strategy against the United States was focused on undermining domestic confidence in the U.S. president. They wanted to just make you sound like your president wasn't so hot, when actually your president has done a great job.
Yes, MAGA's push.
Did you hear Trump right there? He sounds like his dentures are falling out of his mouth. Let's listen to that again.
Wasn't so hot, when like your president wasn't so hot.
Right there. You hear that? That's interesting to me. He's definitely.
Your president has done a great job.
Yes, MAGA is pushing the same Russiagate style nonsense, except this time using China in order to scare the Fox News watching boomers. The same way that Democrats used Russia in order to scare the CNN and MSNBC watching liberal boomers. The ruling class really uses the same playbook over and over and over again. Imagine being a MAGA Zionist and complaining about election integrity and foreign interference. Fam, you guys are openly loyal to another country while helping that country rig American elections. Donald Trump even bragged about how he took bribes from Zionists like Miriam Alderson and now doing their bidding. We just witnessed Israel buy a congressional seat,
there you go,
breaking campaign records in order to unseat Thomas Massey. The Jewish supremacists at AIPAC openly brags about corrupting American elections and buying off all our politicians. Meanwhile, they want us to be afraid about Chinese and Russian election interference. In fact, the number one threat to global election integrity is the United States, who engaged in dozens of regime change operations over the course of the last few decades.
So there you have it. Mr. Nick Cruz with the weather. A wise man once said, you better check yourself before you wreck yourself. And I feel like the USA could benefit from paying heed to that wisdom. But I want to wrap this up for you today with this little nugget. Little nugget for you. This whole thing is giving Russiagate energy. And it reminded me of when the Democrats tried to sue Russia and WikiLeaks after they lost. Do you remember that? Republicans seem to be preemptively setting the stage for the shellacking they're about to get in the midterms. And when they finally do lose, they're going to probably point at China and cite this kind of marker that they laid down here as their evidence that China was going to come in and try to get the Democrats back in. And both of these parties do this. They have this uncanny ability. This is how out of touch our leadership is. I have a clip of Kamala Harris in the beginning of my stream telling Charlemagne how Colin Kaepernick's bend the knee protests against police violence are spurred by the Russians. So these people are, it couldn't possibly be a real American problem, you know, it couldn't possibly be something that, you know, organically cropped up here in the United States due to our own internal problems. No. Everything is a foreign influence operation. That's how pathetic our politics has become. There's no accountability, and that's why. There's never been any accountability for anything. There are people who push the Iraq war are on TV today pushing the Iran war as if they have any credibility. No accountability whatsoever. And the same goes for politicians. These Democrats who suck, Nancy Pelosi, for example, Mitch McConnell is not a Democrat, but these politicians who suck, but Lindsey Graham continually get reelected somehow. There's never accountability for being a shithead in America. And that's why things have degraded to the level that they've degraded to. In our next story, we're going to discuss a massive propaganda campaign. And this is a propaganda campaign that is so obvious. It's so obvious. Like, you go on to Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and you see these people repeating the same thing in different words, basically. The Charlie Kirk thing has been such a great example of this, where it's very clear that these people are all reading from the same script, because you would have to be either being paid or a complete stooge to believe the stuff that they're pushing. It's very clear that Tyler Robinson did not shoot Charlie Kirk. It's very clear that Charlie Kirk was not shot in the neck with a rifle bullet, because if he did, there would have been a lot more blood. If he was, there would have been a lot more blood. So where do you go from there? I mean, those are just, if you're a sensible human being with a functioning brain looking at that scenario and the way that they hurried and cleaned it up and hid a bunch of the evidence, you cannot look at that situation and go, oh, that's totally up to snuff. That's 100% legit. I believe that. And listen, I'm from Utah. I was born in Utah. Utah is the best place to do something like that and have the populace believe you, because a lot of the people there believe the Mormon church is real. And if you believe that's real, you'll fucking believe anything. So there is that. So I want to start this fucking fire today with a Candace Owens tweet. She tweeted out this Time story about Salem Media and Brad Parscale. And this is a guy who, of course, wields a hefty amount of influence in the Republican Party after he was the guy who helped Trump get elected initially. He was the web guy. He's one of those dudes who I kind of related to because he was like, I'm a web guy. So he was the guy who like built Trump's website and helped him buy social media ads. And they tripped on a rake and won the election, you know? And so Parscale, he was Trump's campaign manager for a while, but this time around they went with the establishment, Susie Wiles, establishment Zionist. This guy, of course, it's not like he's not, we're going to get into it, but I think in Parscale's case, one of the reasons that they didn't use him in the administration this time is because he has a whole domestic abuse case thing in his recent history, and so I think that was kind of like a little too much of a lead weight around his neck for them to give him any real political, appointment in the administration. So instead, he went this route. So Candace tweeted this out. She said, "This article is worth a read. Israel literally thought they could purchase our perception of them with money." Now, hold on, Candace, because they've been doing that for years. So, there is a precedent there that they've set. It's kind of like for years and years. I mean, I bought this as someone who didn't know what was going on and just got my information from CNN and, NBC and ABC News. They did buy our perception for a long time. So you can't really blame them for thinking they can keep doing that. But I digress. Now they're angry because despite tens of millions of dollars spent on quote unquote influencers, we hate them more than ever. It really is a shame they didn't offer me money to consult for them and explain why this campaign was never going to work. It's just a different world. Ad spend and crisis PR firms no longer equal results. In fact, they tend to have the exact opposite desired effect. You can't spend or sue your way into popularity anymore. Extreme power plays featuring limitless budgets, slick talking lawyers, and DC connections make people left and right resent you because you clearly resent them and think they're unworthy of an honest conversation. Candace. This right here. Why Candace is so popular. Try articulating why they should support or believe you outside of because we're rich and powerful and will destroy you if you don't. Free advice. Candace, if it's free, is it really worth anything? Come on now. Well, I did you the favor of pulling a couple of the... we're not going to read the whole thing, but a good chunk of this article just to give you a gist of where they're going here. Because this is one of those instances where some actual journalism is being done. You have Time Magazine here, clearly, obviously, with a political axe to grind against the Trump administration. But also, hey, every news outlet should have an axe to grind against any political administration. You're not there to suck their nipples. You're there to be an oppositional counterweight to their power. That seems to have changed, obviously over the last 20 years in U.S. media because it all got bought up by the people who own the government. But the internet is changing that, which is why they're trying to censor it. I've gone over this before. You see the girl from Jacobin who did the smear campaign against Christian Smalls recently is a good example. Back in the day, you could just write that smear article and let it permeate throughout, the culture. But in today's world, you're held accountable for what you write, and people are like, "What the fuck are you doing?" You're like, "There's so much in this that's not real," and you're smearing this guy who's a leftist activist who deserves respect. So anyway, I use that as an example, but again, this is a case of the press tripping on a rake and accidentally doing some journalism. So there's some really good information in this. Especially if you're on Twitter X and you haven't seen it yet. So let's get going. Let's get it started. Let's get the party. Let's get this party started. God damn it. I really hate when it does this to me. The browser freezes on me. Okay, hold on a sec. I am not gonna put up with this. I'll be right back. All right, we're back. We are back. Now, where we left off was we were going to discuss this article about Brad Parscale and Salem Media. And this is an article that Candace Owens tweeted out. But the article goes into, just to kind of refresh your memory here, how millions upon millions of dollars was spent on an influence campaign to convince you of certain viewpoints, and that influence campaign is not working. And so people are upset. Let's get into it right here. Trump's ex-campaign manager is running an Israeli influence operation. Wait a minute. So the whole point of me, because my StreamYard is terrible software lately, and it's freezing up, but I wanted to celebrate this article. Kick it off with a DJ air horn. Anyway, Trump's ex-campaign manager is running an Israeli influence operation targeting the MAGA base. The headline on its own is a great one. After the U.S. and Iran agreed to a ceasefire deal on June 17th, the senior U.S. official was monitoring the online reaction when they noticed something surprising. President Donald Trump's aides had expected his supporters to celebrate the agreement. Instead, online influencers in Trump's MAGA movement were excoriating it on social media. One shared an Israeli op-ed titled, "You could have been the greatest president of all, but you failed." Several posted the same video of Qatar's prime minister appearing to snub Vice President J.D. Vance in Israel, arguing it showed regional powers dismissing the Trump administration's naivete. Others accused Trump of surrendering before achieving his stated objective of eliminating Iran's nuclear program. Many of the posts appeared almost simultaneously with similarities in language and tone. The official began collecting screenshots and came to believe it wasn't a coincidence. Tracing tweets by prominent members of the online right, the official came to believe there was an unlikely figure at the center of all this criticism: Trump's former presidential campaign manager and digital guru, Brad Parscale. Last September, the global ad agency Havas, an agency who I've worked with, having worked in media for a long time, hired Parscale's firm, Clocktower X, to conduct a digital campaign on behalf of the State of Israel. According to Foreign Agents Registration Act filings reviewed by Time under the agreement, Parscale's operation would produce 100 original pieces of content each month, with at least 80% aimed at Gen Z audiences across TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and podcasts. In a services agreement draft included in the filing, Parscale also pledged to amplify the campaign across social media and through integration of narrative messaging into Salem Media Network properties and aligned distribution channels. Referring to the Christian conservative broadcasting and publishing company where he serves as chief strategy officer, Parscale vowed the effort would produce at least 50 million digital impressions per month, as well as influence how AI tools such as OpenAI's ChatGPT and Anthropic's Claude and Google's Gemini characterized Israel and the war. For all of this, Israel agreed to pay Clocktower $1.5 million per month. Now, a couple of things I want to touch on here. First of all, that's a bombshell in itself, that the advertising effort on its own was designed to influence AI. That last part right there where they're saying like, hey, this was designed to like influence AI's takes. Second of all, this explains this FARA filing that where Time was able to gather all this information from, explains why they are doing this, why they are trying to merge our militaries, because if they do that, then they can keep all this kind of stuff secret. But because it's a foreign entity, still, they have to file this kind of stuff. And intrepid journalists, when they exist, can dig it up like Time did here. So publicly, the campaign was framed as an effort to combat rising anti-Semitism online. Interesting, eh? I gotta go to my Kanye clip now. Where is Kanye? The ADL's played out.
I hear you. It's definitely a tiger by the tail.
I swear, I have to do some cleanup on my setup because I just actually rearranged some of these clips so I had them easy access to them, and now they're not here. I mean, why is this all the way down here? This should be way up here.
No one in high school knew what the word anti-Semitic was until Ye made it popular.
Publicly, the campaign was framed as an effort to combat rising anti-Semitism online. An Israeli foreign ministry official familiar with the arrangement says there was another strategic aim, preventing young conservatives from turning against Israel. According to the official, Parscale presented himself as uniquely positioned to improve Israel's reputation among young conservatives. He stressed his experience at the helm of Trump's political operation. Young conservatives, with a grasp of both architecture of the modern internet and the political movement Trump had built. His position at Salem, whose radio stations, websites, podcasts, and digital properties were part of the conservative media ecosystem he promised to mobilize, was a boon as well. So I'm not quite sure what the difference is between Clocktower and Salem. It sounds like Clocktower is Brad's own company, but Salem is just one of the companies he works for that a lot of other people work for, like Hugh Hewitt and Scott Jennings on CNN. While Parscale acknowledges that the operation was intended to prevent young conservatives from drifting away from Israel, he says neither he nor his firms played any role in turning opinion against Trump's objectives. I have never funded, organized, or participated in any effort to undermine President Trump ever, including his MOU or ceasefire proposal, Parscale tells Time. The claim that I am coordinating an effort to prolong the war is completely false. The only people manufacturing a conflict between President Trump, Israel, and me are the anonymous officials using background quotes to make me the boogeyman. Now, this feeds in a little bit to what I was saying earlier about how I think that they are, now that he won the presidency, what they're doing is trying to make Trump a giant embarrassment so that when his presidency is over, they can go, see, we told you guys not to vote for someone that's not approved by us. You did it anyway, and look what you got. That's my take on what they're doing now. And again, I'm not trying to support Trump. There was too much pushback against Trump to begin with for him to just be this innocuous establishment figure. Now, something changed. Anyway, let's keep going. 3 people familiar with the campaign describe a messaging operation run through a network of interconnected firms overseen by Parscale or other firms he owns or created, such as Campaign Nucleus and Influenceable, in which he now owns a minority stake. Through private group chats, they say conservative influencers receive suggested language for posts on social media sites such as X, Instagram, and TikTok. They were then compensated based on the impressions and engagement of their content created on its website. Clocktower X says it has developed an influencer ecosystem that includes managed networks that amplify narratives through credible distributed voices. Of course. It remains unclear how much of Parscale's outfits paid creators as part of the Israel campaign. Another recent Influenceable campaign offered influencers a base payment of $22.50 plus $1 for every 1,000 views, up to 2 million views, allowing influencers to earn as much as $4,250 per post, according to internal text messages reviewed by Time. People who participated, most of whom asked for anonymity fearing reprisals, rejected the suggestion that there was anything improper about the practice. Parscale says none of the money from the fair registered contract has been used to pay influencers, arguing that doing so would require them to disclose the source of their funding. He says other Christian organizations hired his firms, such as Influenceable, to support Israel in the wake of the October 7th attacks, but he declined to identify them. One of the conservative figures associated with the campaign was Eyal Jacobi, who, if you've ever seen this guy, it's very obvious that he was a paid voice in the game because he's always on the same trip. A recent college grad with Popular X account, who began working with one of the Parscale's firms about a year ago, he says, after testifying before a House committee about anti-Semitism on college campuses, Jacobi says neither Influenceable nor any other firm has ever compensated him to promote views he did not already hold. That there is the key phrase. It's not like an agency that represents you, he says. An official with Influenceable, says Jacobi, has participated in numerous campaigns on issues related to Israel. Eyal Jacobi has worked with Influenceable as a paid influencer, but never on behalf of the Israeli government, the executive says. Interesting. That's how they do it. There's a degree of separation there because the Israeli government pays Influenceable, and then Influenceable pays the influencers. They have a degree of separation. Oh, the Israeli government doesn't pay me. Influenceable does. The Israeli government pays them. That's how it works. The executive says, insisting none of their influencers have been paid with foreign money, Jacobi declined to comment further. Of course he did. The Parscale-led effort continues, but neither the Trump administration nor the Israelis appear happy about how it's going. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government had hired Parscale to improve the nation's standing among conservatives, only to watch support continue to erode on the American right and across the broader U.S. electorate. We are pissed at Brad Parscale, says the Israeli official familiar with the arrangement, who spoke on a condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. He was supposed to make things better. We have paid him lots of money, but what did he do with it? Things have only gotten worse. According to the Pew Research Center, favorable views of both Israel and Netanyahu have fallen since last year. Only 32% of Americans now view the Israeli government favorably, the lowest level in decades. In April, Pew found that Republicans with a negative view of Israel ticked up since last year, with 50% of young Republicans having an unfavorable view of Israel compared to the 50% a year ago. Global anti-Semitic incidents, meanwhile, have surged 34%. Who defines what global anti-Semitic incidents are? Come on, tell me who it is. Kanye. Where are you, Kanye? Where's Kanye?
ADL is played out. Nobody knows who the ADL are. Stop giving them attention. Nobody cares about the ADL.
So 57% of young Republicans having an unfavorable view of Israel compared with 50% a year ago. So the number's gone up. Global anti-Semitic incidents, meanwhile, have surged 34% since the Iran war's outbreak, according to the Combat Anti-Semitism Movement's Anti-Semitism Research Center. Interesting. Now, lest you believe that this is some, isolated thing, I want to take you to, real quick, I was going to save this for later, but I'm just going to jump up to it now. An article that I saved a couple years ago because I have a deep archive of articles, political articles specifically, that I save here. And the Democrats do the same thing. How a Twitter fight over Bernie Sanders revealed a network of fake accounts. This is from March 14th of 2018. And just a quick trip down memory lane here for you. This article, of course, from March 14th of 2018. How a Twitter fight over Bernie Sanders revealed a network of fake accounts. One Democratic Party consultant said an unnamed client controlled many of these accounts. When Russian Internet Research Agency interfered in U.S. politics, they created false online personas and fake political groups to amplify diverse messages that already had a homegrown American audience. It's not too far from what some U.S. political consultants are doing themselves. Interesting, isn't it, that language? Not too far. It's exactly. Take Sally Albright, a Democratic Party communications consultant who backed presidential candidate Hillary Clinton in 2016. Unsurprisingly, Albright is vocally opposed to President Donald Trump and a big supporter of the resistance to his administration. She's also one of the loudest, most divisive voices attacking Bernie Sanders, Clinton's one-time Democratic primary opponent, and his left-wing supporters. Well, after the primary, Albright continues to claim Sanders is a fraud, a liar, a racist, corrupt, among many other things. In one instance, she declared the policy idea of free college as promoted by Sanders was racist. This provoked Sanders supporters to argue back. Trevor, a Sanders supporter who declined to provide his last name for fear of being doxxed, but goes by liking online on Twitter, noticed a strange pattern of behavior when Albright responded to him. Her tweets addressing him were rapidly retweeted by the same series of accounts. This created a barrage of notifications, making it look as though there were an avalanche of opposition to everything he said. But as Trevor discovered, an extensive amount of research that he had posted online, these were not normal accounts. They appeared to be bots, automated accounts masked as real people, being used to amplify a particular political message. Who is really pulling the strings, however, remains a mystery. This is why Eyal Jacobi has a popular account on Twitter, because of bots like this. Albright told HuffPost the accounts were voluntarily handed over by their original users to an unnamed client of hers to be automated in an analytics program, in quotes. She said she was bound by a non-disclosure agreement and could not disclose who was collecting and automating these accounts and for what purpose. But like her, these accounts were all pro-Clinton, anti-Trump, and anti-Sanders.
That's insulting.
So what you have here is a very visible influence operation. And what I think is the most funny about this is that the Democrats did this during the 2024 election cycle, and they lost the election. Now that the Republicans are in charge and they have the government, they think they're going to use that tactic to dupe their voters into going along with shit that their voters voted against during the election cycle. People are not as dumb as you think they are, and everyone can see these influence operations online. You sloppy, terrible political consultants. So I got a little bit ahead of myself here. But that was the end of the Brad Parscale, kind of thing. Most people that were paying attention to these accounts like Eyal Jacobi or Nick Solder or Gunther Eagleman can tell they're fake paid influencers. But it was nice of Time to confirm it for us. And I mean, any of these people that are saying Tim Pool is taking the money now. Megan Kelly. Oh my God. Yeah. Democrats did the exact same thing too, though. They have the same. So it's not even a partisan thing. It's just one of those rare instances where the media did some legitimate reporting. So speaking of legitimate reporting, Max Blumenthal. Let's pull this up for you. The Grayzone, this is from their Wikipedia. The Grayzone is a far-right and far-left news website and blog founded by editor and American journalist Max Blumenthal. Max, of course, is one of the last real journalists in the United States. The rest of them are co-opted partisan hacks. And if you paid attention to Max like I have, he's always critical of the government, regardless of who's in charge of it. Doesn't matter what party runs the government, Max is out here criticizing them. And that's why I trust him as a journalist. Does that mean he's 100% right 100% of the time? Yes. No, I'm kidding. No, you're never right 100%. Sometimes your sources dupe you, sometimes, but I trust his motives because he's adequately skeptical and adequately militant against government, left or right. He was critical of Obama, he was critical of Biden, and now he's critical of Trump. And that is why Wikipedia is struggling to list him as a far right / far left journalist. Like whoever on the staff had to write the Wikipedia entry, it's like their head melted. They're like, well, he said this, but he's left wing, but he's right wing, and I don't know what to do. His brain just melted while he was writing the entry. He's like, boy, he's far left and far right. Well, he's far left because he believes in, that you shouldn't give Israel bombs to kill women and children in the Middle East, but he's far right because he also believes that you shouldn't have to take a government injection without. Anyway, Max was one of the few journalists who called out the Russiagate hoax for what it was. But now Trump's at the wheel, so he's calling out the Chinagate hoax. And most recently, he has been one of the few people reporting in Iran. And I want to start with this little tidbit here from Defending Rights and Dissent. And Defending Rights and Dissent here says, on July 13th, 2026, The Grayzone reported that their editor-in-chief, Max Blumenthal, was detained at Dulles International Airport in Washington, D.C. Interesting that Alan Dulles gets an airport in D.C. Upon return from a reporting trip to Iran to cover the funeral of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, agents searched Blumenthal's person and demanded his devices, and when Blumenthal refused to unlock his smartphone, CBP ordered him to hand them over for detention. According to the Grayzone, this seizure of his devices followed a public campaign against him by pro-Israel influencers and groups, some of whom have been able to influence the Trump administration in the past. Defending Rights and Dissent Policy Director Chip Gibbons had this statement. We condemn any detention or interrogation of journalists over their reporting at the U.S. border, seizing potentially searching a journalist's electronic devices poses a serious risk to press freedom. Journalists have not only a right, but a duty to report from countries under attack by the U.S. government and bring the U.S. people perspectives their government may not want them to hear. It is notable that while Max Blumenthal was not the only U.S. journalist in Iran to cover Khamenei's funeral, he is reportedly the only one to face harassment on his way home. This indicates that Blumenthal was potentially singled out due to the content of his reporting, which has been highly critical of U.S. foreign policy, or due to an extended campaign against him led by pro-Israel McCarthyites. This is unacceptable and must be condemned in the strongest personal terms. So he was detained and had his devices confiscated, and of all the people that covered it, he was one of the only people who was actually detained. Now, I want to go a little bit deeper here because Janine Eunice and the ADC filed this lawsuit against the government, and then Max received his devices back. And so he says in this tweet here, soon after the ADC filed a lawsuit against DHS Secretary Mullen, the illegal seizure of my devices, I received a call from CBP informing me that I could retrieve them. This does not make our case moot, however. And I thought this guy says he literally participated in the funeral of the leader of a country we're actively at war with and is upset his phones were seized on the way home. This guy chimed in and asked Grok if Max Blumenthal really attended the funeral of the Ayatollah. Grok chimed in down here. Yes, Max Blumenthal attended, covered the July 2026 funeral of Ayatollah, traveled there to report on the massive mourning processions, joined events, paying respects alongside surrounding figures like Professor Morandi, and posted about visiting what he called the largest funeral in history. This occurred amid heightened U.S. Israel-Iran tensions following Khamenei's assassination. So I had to chime in and add my own 2 cents here. And I said, it's called doing journalism. I'm not mad at this ultimate philosopher guy for asking, but more the guy above him. Something half-wit Americans don't recognize anymore. Americans in 2026 say things like this. You told me something I don't like. That's blank propaganda. Russian or Iranian or whatever you need. So it's so bad that these whiny, mentally fragile people who cry and scream when they hear something they don't agree with are now threatening people with physical violence. And they're so mentally weak, they have to resort to hurting people physically. Think about that. That's because people who have to resort to violence when in an argument of any kind, especially a political argument, though, they're stupid, barbaric cavemen who don't have a valid intellectual argument for their political belief or religious belief or whatever it is. And, those people have to resort to violence because they can't argue with you on a mental level. And listen, me saying this doesn't mean I won't get violent in my own self-defense. I will crush your face with my bare fists if I need to, but that's only if you come at me violent first, and you can't be reasoned with. If I can't reason with you and you come at me with violence, then you're going to get it in return. I just proved I could be a barbaric caveman too. And I think all men, testosterone driven men, have it in them to some degree. It's biologically wired into us. All humans, really. Women can be brutal too. But that said, it's a last resort or the go-to tool for the mentally weak and cowardly. And in this case, it's that tool for the mentally weak and cowardly. Mentally frail cowards who have no rational argument and have to resort to violence to make their point. Now, this is where Max is at right now. Several days ago, I received a threatening letter informing me that I am moving up on the list and that I am fucked. The letter calls me a capo, indicating its authorship by a Zionist fanatic, possibly affiliated with an outlook like the JDL outfit, like the JDL Brotherhood 613, or from Batar, dead enders who advocate violence against perceived enemies of Israel. I don't know what a capo is, so I'm gonna maybe someone in the comments. Capo is an alias for Colombian singer-songwriter. Oh, okay. The term capo refers to a historical designation used in Nazi concentration camps for prisoners who were coerced or forced by the SS to supervise other inmates and manage camp details. So everything goes back to this victim mentality with these people. They're always the perpetual victims in every situation. So calling Max a capo, of course, implicates them as a victim of him. Sigh. I opened this letter as Israel-backed Trump admin allies like Laura Loomer portrayed me as a national security threat and demanded my persecution for reporting from Iran, and as the Trump administration harassed me by illegally seizing my phones. I'm not the only person to have received these letters. Howard Heath, a state representative in New Hampshire who is campaigning for Congress on a pledge to cut off military aid to Israel, also reported receiving a letter from the same You're Dead Meat. The return address applied to the letter is the field office of Rep. Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian member of Congress. To me, this indicates that she and her staff could also be targets of whichever malicious individual or group sent this letter. I have filed a report with the local police and informed the U.S. Postal Service inspector of this threatening letter. So here it is. And I really like that he just posted this online because why not, And so just to go down in this a little bit, Ukraine trolls in the entire states. The reason for it is they're the same Zionist masters. Of course, Buffalo, New York. This is where it went out of. This is so silly. There was the image is more clear. Oh, yeah. Here's someone accusing him of doing this. Of course. Yeah. He just did this. Again, this is the perpetual victim thing that I just, whenever this always manifests itself with these people, it's always like, oh, see, I'm actually the victim. You did this to trick us. The projection is so strong because this is the kind of stuff that they would do. So there was originally, I don't know why it's not visible anymore, but under Max's tweet, originally there were some additional posts of people that had received the letter, but I don't see them here now. So interesting. Anyhow, this is proof to me that Zionism has officially lost the argument. When you have to resort to threats of violence, again, you are mentally incapable of making a valid argument. There's no longer an intellectual debate to be had with you because you have no valid argument to make, or you're just so unreasonable that you can't be reasoned with anyway. And the only thing you're going to answer to is that language of violence. So Zionism has lost the argument. Moving on. Ukrainistan is winning. The NATO plan in Ukraine from 2013 was to steal all Russia's oil, gas, minerals, and gold, as was successful in Yugoslavia, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Lebanon, Argentina, Venezuela, and is still attempted for Iran. So the Financial Times is forced to admit that Ukraine is in total disarray. Subtext: US, UK, NATO, and EU and Ukraine have lost their war against Russia. Now, do you see the parallels between this and Iran? The USA is really a sneaky little troll, isn't it? If you look at US news too, this is very subtle, and Kathleen here is kind of pointing out the subtleties, but you would think Ukraine's totally winning right now if you listen to CNN or MSNBC or a lot of these like corporate outlets, these, what do they call them? Lamestream media outlets.
Cares what an irrelevant lamestream media is going to say about you.
So the facts, however, will tell a different story. I'm going to show you this. So strap in for some Russian propaganda. Foreign propaganda is, of course, anything that deviates from the official government narrative. So let's just admit right now what we're doing. Foreign propaganda. Recently, Zelensky, or Le Goblin Vert, as the Durin calls him, the Green Goblin, has been desperately begging for money and trying to prove that he's making progress, hitting things in Russia. This is happening as Russia materially takes more and more Ukrainian territory, of course, and Ukrainian bodies pile up at like a 10-to-1 ratio against Russian bodies. So very recently, the most recent kind of update here with the attacks against Russia was Zelensky hit Moscow. And this is the most recent PR move that the Zelensky regime has pulled here. This looks devastating. This photo, I mean, the way that it's captured and everything, it just looks like, just take that in real quick while I. So that looks just, that looks bad. It looks like Ukraine is really putting the screws to old Putin, and these are the kind of photos that get run in the Western press, of course. Consequences be damned. But here is an alternative point of view. Global dissident. Ukraine wants you to believe they struck an oil refinery in Moscow. The truth is they hit a civilian warehouse with no military value, killed innocent people, and now call it a win. Another Ukraine lie. Now, this is, again, allegedly, this is Russian propaganda. But I want to show you this take from Olga Bazova, who is a pretty legit account on Twitter that I follow. She says, the funny thing about wildberries is that it could probably purchase the whole of the failed state called the Ukraine, going for the current market price. Freaking degenerates are celebrating this big fire of a single warehouse while Russia blows up ammo depots with depleted uranium and cluster munitions that Zelensky purposely placed in the middle of residential neighborhoods to cause maximum damage to Ukrainian population. Allegedly. Long-range sanctions against Wildberries, a warehouse, sure does look good on video. A juicy military target, an online retailer of consumer goods that has nothing to do with the military. A strike which you murdered civilian workers. So apparently Wildberries is kind of like a Russian Amazon type thing. And as a response to this, Russia blasted the shit out of Kiev the other night. And this is from Shea Bose. Western media won't be telling you about what was destroyed in Kiev last night in the biggest ballistic missile salvo of the conflict. So here's the civilian targets that were destroyed. Radionix production of guidance systems for Neptune missiles, Spetsoboronimash components for missile systems, Meridian assembly of rocket body elements, Oakline, Nova Poshta terminal hidden in warehouse of dual use parts. In addition, a logistics hub in Tereskova. So here is yet another kind of look into this from a journalist who I trust a lot more than I trust any of the mainstream Western media. And of course, as always, this reporting is alleged until proven otherwise. Allegedly, say allegedly after everything. 40 Russian missiles and 1 death in Kiev. Fatalities from Russian airstrikes are falling with depletion of Kiev AD projectiles, which caused most of the deaths. Russia and Iran do not target civilians as US, NATO, Israel always do. So the argument that Kathleen here is making is that there are less casualties in these Kiev strikes now because they are out of interceptor missiles and Russia is targeting with surgical precision military targets. They're not trying to hurt civilians. They're just trying to take out military targets, allegedly. And what the civilian toll was coming from in the past was failed interceptors, failed, interceptor missiles, basically. So now you have, of course, Zelensky doing the meme. And this is just the greatest meme for a lot of things, but especially this war. This guy, what's this guy's name? Cuoco or whatever the hell that guy's name is. Kalen reports. Kalin. Every building in the city center is shaking. In Kiev, Russia is firing dozens of missiles into residential areas. Absolute sickening terrorism. To which I responded with the meme because Zelensky's doing the meme once again. And the actual numbers, unfortunately, are not looking good for the Green Goblin and the Ukraine because we don't really get, you're never going to get valid casualty numbers, but these numbers are verified numbers. And I got this from the Durin. These numbers tell the story. Because the Ukrainians and the Russians do these body exchanges monthly and look at the ratio there. That tells the story. In January, that's how many Ukrainian bodies with the Ukrainian flag next to it were given back, back to Ukraine by Russia. And on the right with the Russian flag are how many Russian bodies were given back to Russia by Ukraine. So follow that column down. And look, the trend is lessening, right? So if you notice, the Russian deaths are kind of staying the same and the amount of Ukrainians are dying are going down. But you have to ask yourself, why? Is that because, the Russian strikes are getting more effective at just hitting military targets? Is that because, as Kathleen said in the last tweet, the interceptors are running out and that's what was hurting the soldiers and civilians? That was what hurt. There's 1,000 different reasons that this number is. Ukraine just running out of soldiers to be killed? That's the other side of it. So these numbers, I think, are probably the closest you're going to get to a real picture of the casualties in this war. And we will leave it there for now because we have another front in World War III to discuss today, the war with Iran. This is an oldie but goodie thumbnail that I used a while back. It's a work of AI. I call it digital on canvas with AI. But it basically, I think, very accurately sums up the current situation for the USA in the Iran war. And it's back in full swing, going smashingly well. To some, the USA keeps pretending to negotiate to calm the markets and buy time, but in the end goes right back to attacking. But there's a little piece of this whole charade that I think a lot of people are missing. Well, there are a lot of pieces, but there's a big overarching strategy piece that no one's really paying attention to. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. But let's start right here. This is a tweet from, the good folks at DD Geopolitics. And they point out that Americans are crying about non-existent Chinese election interference while Russia and especially Iran are absolutely decimating the U.S. economic and military assets. You need to buy gas and food like now. Wild stuff to watch. So take that for what it's worth. I'm not an alarmist in the same regard, but we're going to get into some of the receipts here. Douglas McGregor has this. As of mid-July, at least 370 U.S. service members have been wounded in the Middle East. Now, methinks that wounded is a very vague, large, encompassing term. And also, I think that's bullshit. But I want to start by saying I don't know where he's getting that number. But I think it's probably much closer to the actual casualty count than what we're getting. Excuse me. But also, they're marking people who are clearly dead as missing. So all of these numbers are suspect. And where are the investigative journalists at? Why hasn't someone dug into this like Time just did with Parscale's Israel influence operation? Why hasn't 60 Minutes done a deep dive into like the amount of the way that they're hiding casualties and wounded in the Iraq war or Iran war? The Iraq war. Here we are, where we always knew we'd be, a couple decades later at war with Iran. So this gets continually better here because this is Glenn Deason talking about some Blackhawks, and this is from July 18th, which is yesterday, of course. New York Times reports that a significant number of Blackhawk helicopters were damaged by an Iranian missile strike on a U.S. military base in Jordan. The first attack to hit U.S. forces in Jordan struck a residential facility at King Faisal Air Base, wounding as many as 5 U.S. service members, they said. The second hit a base in eastern Jordan where U.S. Blackhawk helicopters were operating from, damaging a significant number of them. Now, you got to love the subversive language of the New York Times here. They have that college-educated vocabulary, and they're really putting it to work for you with this kind of like weird linguistic rearranging of things. So they start with significant number of Blackhawks, significant number. They're not going to be we're not going to be specific, but it's a lot. Not a lot, but significant. It's like as vague as possible without actually lying through their teeth. Like it's a significant number. I mean, that's choice vagueness right there. And then they have wounding as many as 5. They won't say killing. They say wounding as many as, because that way they're not lying if they were killed, because they were wounded first. And if there were more than 5, they didn't lie because they said as many as, but they didn't say more than or less than 5. So it's just the way that these guys kind of do the limbo with the language, or like, bullet dot, what's the play twister with linguistics, twister linguistics here. It's very interesting. That's what you're paying for when you subscribe to the New York Times. But not to be outdone, we got WAPO here. And this is from like a week ago when the fighting first started up again, and I retweeted, "We won the war again." But WAPO is admitting to 6 dead here, and how many more wounded? Many more wounded, some seriously, which means they're most likely dead by now. If they were seriously wounded, they're probably a week later, they're probably dead. So this is continuing, and they're covering up the actual cost to the American people in both money and lives. But there's a big piece of the puzzle that a lot of people are missing, myself included. And Richard Medhurst has been out here just hammering on this. And he says, look up the record-breaking amount of barrels per day the U.S. are producing and tell me again that closing Hormuz is bad for business. The U.S. Navy are blockading it for a reason. And no one in the U.S. the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve is not the only source of oil that Washington have. Now, no one's really talking about this. And because Trump said it, people don't take him seriously when he says stuff like this. He's like, oh, we're the best. We're selling more oil than ever before. It's the greatest thing if ever. No one's ever seen anything like it in the history of our country. So people just don't take that serious. But in this case, he's not wrong. Look at this. Now, I was going to show you the Reuters article, but apparently you have to pay to read Reuters now. So I just took this from Google AI. U.S. crude exports reached an all-time high of 5.6 million barrels per day. 5.6 million barrels per day in May. This surge was primarily driven by global buyers in Asia and Europe scrambling for alternatives to Middle Eastern crude during the Strait of Hormuz conflict. The massive ship upended historical oil trade flows and cemented the U.S. as the world's leading oil exporter. Key details surrounding the export milestones include, this is from the Reuters article, crude oil exports averaged 5.6 million BPD in May, surpassing the previous record of 5.2 million BPD in just 1 month prior in April. Why are we missing this? Total petroleum products. Overall petroleum exports include crude, propane, and distillates, peaked at an unprecedented 13.6 million BPD in April. Key destinations, U.S. demand for the U.S. crude hit record highs in Europe and Asia. So this is reported by April, and again, this is the part that they're not talking about, because if the Trump administration or the Trump people are good at anything, it's wagging the dog, creating this like massive media uproar about something and then doing something else on the side. So like this Iran thing, it's like, yeah, we're getting our asses handed to us, militarily. And I think most Americans are like on Iran's side for the most part. Like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Fine, compete on the global market with Iran if that's what we're going to do. Why do we have to be the goddamn bullies of the world? Well, because all of our money, the vast majority of our money is in weapons manufacturing and this garbage. Like I've said before, until that is not profitable anymore, we are going to remain the cunts of the world, the bullies of the world, because our entire economy is buoyed since World War II by selling weapons. And now, apparently, we are the oil suppliers of the world. Who would have thunk? I always, to be honest, too, Richard Medhurst, first of all, kudos to him. Bit of applause for Medhurst for pointing this out. But also, I have to say, I always kind of thought it was dumb Republican propaganda that as the U.S. has all this oil that we weren't actually selling. And the fact it's like, why not? Like, sell it. I really, the global warming hysteria stuff, clearly now it's like, listen, I don't think that dumping smoke into the atmosphere is good for it, but I also think that there is some hysteria around the global warming thing. And if that wasn't the case, Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth movie would all be true now. And we've lived past the dates he said we were supposed to be drowning in, the polar ice caps melting and stuff, So there's a middle ground here too. It's like, obviously there's poisonous gas coming out of cars. That's not good for the environment. We should work to get away from that too. So there is this middle ground here, but this war was not meant to end. This is the thing that people don't understand. And, I hope that Trump is smart enough to cut his losses and get out of there soon, because it's not going to be pretty in the end. And I don't know. I'm really interested to see, again, they're totally lying about they're downplaying the casualties. And this is the last thing I will say on this, because this is what my comment was to someone starting to spread the rumor now that it's quiet now and there's going to be negotiations again. And I said this, if I'm Iran at this point, I'm only talking to the US with missiles and drones. Like there are no more negotiations happening. You got, I mean, the war started, and this is something Medhurst also pointed out. The war started with us assassinating their fucking leader. Like, what? Where do you talk from there? Holy shit. That's like the most brutal act of aggression you could commit. Imagine if some country just came and murdered President Trump. I think even a lot of liberals would be like, holy shit, like we got to take up arms against, Mozambique or whatever, whoever killed Trump. I'm just sorry, Mozambique. I don't think he would kill Trump. I just pulled that out of my ass as an example of a country we might want to fight, or might be framed for it. Let's be honest. If anyone kills Trump, they're probably being framed for it at this point. I think we as Americans are wise to the game at this point. So let's talk about the Democrats. Okay, let me set this up here, because there is really very few groups of people or institutions that I despise more than the Democrats. I'm going to clean my mouse here for a second. And the reason for that is this. I will explain this to you now. Because they are fake. And the thing that I hate more than anything is fakeness and hypocrisy. The Republicans are total garbage, but at least they're like out front about what garbage they are. They don't try to pretend that they're my friend, or that they're like the friend to gay and black people or anything like that. They don't even pretend. They just run over everyone and like act like complete and total pigs out in the open. The Democrats pretend that they're like morally superior to the Republicans, which makes them even more repugnant, which makes them even more disgusting. They're like, oh, see, our way is the right way. Those dumb Republicans. Like, no, your way is the same way with better optics. You have zero moral high ground. So I want to start here by saying this is literally the brunch liberal take of the decade. And we're gonna get into it. But let's kick it off here with this take from anti-gun violence advocate Fred Gutenberg. Now, let me just read this, because there's just so many different places my brain is going angrily darting to at the moment. Unfortunately, Ro Khanna, this is the kind of position that will cause people like me to step away from the Democratic Party. What position is that, you ask? Today, over 100 Democrats voted for the mass amendment to zero aid to Israel. My brother, Rep. Bowman, and Cori Bush lost their seats for this stand 2 years ago. As a colleague told me, black martyrdom is normalized in America. Today, I want to recognize their courage. You know what? Honestly, Ro Khanna gets a lot of shit, but that is pretty fucking ballsy. Okay, now let's get into Fred Gutenberg here. These people have not learned a fucking thing at all, have they? Now, I did a piece a while back about how how stupid liberals are. And literally the movie Bowling for Columbine kind of highlighted this, how Columbine is famous for being a Lockheed Martin center where we build weapons that we ship overseas to murder thousands of innocent people with. And then when it comes home to us, we're like, oh my God, what happened? Why are our children so violent? Let me go to work tomorrow and sign some bombs to kill a bunch of innocent people in another country because that's what I do for a living. Look at this dude, okay? You know, this guy lost his daughter to gun violence, which if I lost my daughter to gun violence, I would be unhelpable. I would I would be completely insane. Like I would be, let's be honest, I would be hunting down the people that murdered my daughter and choking them to death so I could see the light drain from their eyes before I was killed, is what would happen. Not to go dark there, but like if someone did killed my child, there would be hell to pay. And I think most parents feel that way. And so I understand this man to an extent, where it's like, dude, my child was killed. Oh, what do you do? And that is why this is so disgusting to me. That is why this is just, you would think he would have empathy, maybe, you know what I mean? For people who are carrying their dead children out of buildings that have been leveled by American bombs. You would think the guy who lost his daughter to gun violence unfairly, way too early, could see the shelling. And this goes far beyond the Middle East. The U.S. is guilty of this all over the place. In Vietnam, in Cambodia, in Korea, in Afghanistan, in Iraq. Long list of disgusting. So Gaza and Israel is just the most recent example. Let's be honest here. But still, look at like how disconnected from reality do you have to be to live this kind of contradiction, to hold this kind of contradicting viewpoint in your own mind? What has to be done to you? How lobotomized as a human being do you have to, like, what kind of drugs was this guy given to get to a point where he can go, my daughter was killed by guns, and that's why I support Israel unquestionably, and we should keep on sending them bombs or else. What? So this is kind of what the Democratic Party has really been reduced to. I think this is one of my tweets that actually got seen by 12 people recently. I said, Democrats, I just want a woman of color in charge of arming the genocide. Is that so much to ask?
I like that song. Yay!
And this idea that, we talked at the opening of this with the Chinagate thing. The Republicans are, doing political theater. But this is the kind of stuff that the liberals do. This is the January 6th of Canada. This just came out. And I'm going to go deeper into this in a later segment. But Trudeau government used fake intelligence to illegally frame protesting truckers as violent extremists. This is a good example of liberals using intelligent assets to brainwash their stupid cult member followings, much like fake GOP influencers have fake bot influencers to sway people, towards war with Iran. The Democrats do this with their own base, with these bots that we just talked about in an earlier segment. The Democrat DNC bot farms run by Sally Albright, which are still in existence today. These are the reasons, the only reason that people like Sam Cedar or what's that guy, Humanist Report, even Crystal and Kyle to some extent are heavily weighted by these bot farms, these DNC bot farms. You and I both know it. Because their content sucks. And Gio pointed this out. Your content's horrible. It's not creative. You only get views because the algorithm promotes your mediocre crap while censoring everyone else. I could not have said it better. I'm using that applause sample a lot. But this is why terrible influencers, much like the Brad Parscale thing we went through at the beginning of this. You don't think that's happening too? These Sally Albright bot farms are just in addition to these influenceable type companies. The Democrats have their own. That's where guys like Brian Tyler Cohen come from. And these people, what is it, Politics Girl, that just popped out of, they're all propped up by the bot farms. These fake influencer campaign, these marketing companies put them out. And it's always easy to tell. Like someone like Candace Owens, sure, she has advertisers, but like you can tell that Candace Owens is not being told what to say. Jimmy Dore, another great example. That guy ain't been. Nick Fuentes, on the other hand, he's starting to read from the script now. You're like, okay, we know who you are now, guy. But I think what this really all culminates with the Fred Gutenberg, like, oh, I don't understand why people are mad that I want to unquestionably support Israel when my whole life's goal is to stop violence that killed my daughter. What a disconnected twat do you have to be to hold those two contradicting viewpoints in one brain? I just can't compute that. It doesn't. But what all this highlights is that Democrats have a consultant problem. And we've discussed this quite a bit lately in light of the Graham Plattner accusations. But I just wanted to show you this because this guy pointed out how both these campaigns had one thing in common. Noted Democratic Party consultant Liz Smith. Imagine that. Pete Buttigieg and this lady. Oh my God, it's so cringe. And he says right here, sorry for this reminder, but had to. I don't know how to explain it, but she and Olivia Nuzzi are cut from the exact same cloth. Liz even has a stupid memoir and everything. Liz caught, this is from 2014. Spitzer caught sucking Liz Smith's toes in topless hot tub romp. Oh my God. Both are basic. Both get nasty with old band politicians. Both have little vanity memoirs that had sales in the 4 figures. Hell yeah, Spitzer. I love it. Here's Gio. I guessed correctly. She must have had really high-paid consultants working on her campaign to get an idea that out of touch with reality. Try again. Oh, yeah, this guy's like, Mayor Pete was a tremendous success. Mayor of a city nobody's ever even heard of to a national figure and Secretary of Transportation. Yeah, big W. That guy's probably one of Sally Albright's bots. Let's look at that. Yeah, definitely. One of those purchased accounts from 2011. Anyway, you get the idea. Dem consultants losing elections with their fake ass garbage ideas. And I need to stop telling Democrats what's wrong because it seems like I might be trying to help them and they need to just go away. They need to disappear completely. They need to be relegated to the dumpster of history where they belong. Democrats, the dumpster juice of American politics, the Democrats. I love that term dumpster juice because if you've ever been near a dumpster, if you ever worked a fast food job and had to the dumpster juice is like the gross stuff that kind of builds up at the bottom of the dumpster, all the drippings, all the trash drippings. So disgusting. And there was a band called Dumpster Juice back in the day, some underground thrash band or something. And I just remember hearing that. It was it's in a league with bands like Cannibal Corpse or Pungent Stench, a lot of those like that. I'll just never forget that name, Dumpster Juice. Might have to start playing Dumpster Juice's music on the show, but it's just such a great adjective to describe the Democrats. Dumpster Juice. Oh my God. Well, we got a couple more stories to cover before we get on with it today. And one of those is one that I haven't really talked a lot about. Okay, to be fair, I've talked quite a bit about it. Charlie Kirk. And again, this whole thing is interesting to me for the reason that it's so clearly an op, so obviously an op more than so many of these other stories. And it so clearly encompasses so much of the stuff we've been talking about today, like these paid influencers, this Brad Parscale campaign, and how the Democrats and Republicans use these scripts and these paid influence campaigns to kind of try to lead the public along, but we all see through it pretty clearly because it's pretty obvious who these frauds are when they're all reading from the same script. But the Charlie Kirk assassination, I think, was one of the most shocking things to happen in the past few years. And I think right off the bat, I knew it was an op because they tried to say, oh, the left, it's just the left. If there's anything we know about trans people, it's that they're inherently violent and want to kill everyone. No, yeah, sure. There's been cases of that, but the Charlie Kirk assassination, though, I think, despite what a horrifying event it was and how terrible it was for us to see someone killed live, in real time like that. I mean, let's be honest, American society's numb to violence anyway, but I think it had a silver lining. And that silver lining is that it woke a lot of people up on the right to how fake their side is too. Equally as fake as the Democratic counterparts. And it's helped Candace Owens kind of build this massive audience because she's one of the few people in the media who's been calling out the ridiculous holes in the story. And they are ridiculous. Candace has inspired an army of people, of course, and like she crowdsourced an investigation. It's kind of a brilliant thing she's been doing. And people are mad because they didn't think of it. But also, she's genuine about it. And then, they're trying to smear her as this fake or whatever. But the reason she's resonating with people and she has a massive audience is because it's genuine and you can tell. It's the same reason people can see through Brad Parscale's influence operation, because people know that it's fake and scripted, or as Candace would say, fake and gay. So this woman right here is one of Candace's, kind of mommy blogger type, I guess, influencers at this point, but she kind of lays this case out that I thought was really interesting. And I thought we would just watch it and go over it a little bit. So check this out.
Kirk was ever taken to an ER, and I'll tell you why. I've been an ER nurse for over 20 years, and a lot of things don't add up. Number one, Brian Harpole's story, which I'm about to rip apart, doesn't make any sense. Number two, I'm kind of shocked there's no cell phone footage from patients, visitors, people at the hospital that day. It's a little wild when a black SUV comes flying up at lunchtime in front of an ER with somebody's ass hanging out of it.
That is a great, great point that I never thought of. And again, it's like with the 9/11 thing in retrospect, like the fact that we found the passport of the guy in the rubble. It's like, what? No, you didn't. How dumb were we to believe that? Same thing here. Like, what? There's no like camera footage of these guys pulling up at the hospital, freaking out with Charlie in their truck. Great point, lady.
And a body and blood and just a bunch of craziness, and I'm picturing these like 4 or 5 men like running in with Frank Turek on FaceTime and who knows what. You're telling me none of the ER regulars, none of the nosy lobby patients, nobody pulled out a cell phone and was like, ooh, what's going on? Because like literally that happens when anything happens in an ER. So, like, where are those people? Where are the visitors that day? Where's, the people that were standing outside smoking a cigarette? Like, where's our normal ER crowd? And if you work in an ER, you know exactly the people I'm talking about. You have them. Where are they? Where are they?
So listen, I don't work in an ER, but I drive rideshare and I take a lot of people to ER. And I know exactly who she's talking about when she says the typical ER crowd.
Because those people will record everything and put it on Facebook Live in 0.2 seconds. So, like, where are those people? Also, where are the employees? I understand HIPAA is a thing. I totally understand that. But you're telling me that out of all the employees in that hospital, nobody has said shit through an anonymous source. Nobody has said shit through anybody. Okay. Yeah, sure. So just for shits and gigs, let's break down Brian Harpole's story here. And just for the record, I'm not editing this like while I'm driving because that would be stupid. But anyway, let's tear it apart.
Out and we carry in to the door. Well, once we make it into the door, we see a gurney on the left-hand side. We put him on a gurney, and then I wheel him into a room.
No, you did not, sir. You absolutely did not. You're telling me that you threw Charlie on a gurney and pushed him into a room. Have you ever been into an ER? Like, ever? The rooms are not right there. You usually have to go through a check-in period, like a space, a lobby, through some double doors, maybe a few sets of double doors, like depending on the ER. There's no room right there. I have never in my life been in.
It's almost like these guys never expected to be questioned on this, and if they were, kind of figured it would just go away. And it's interesting to watch how this. Anyway, let me let her keep going because she's killing it.
To an ER where there's just a room, and never in my life have I seen a visitor or someone who does not work in that ER just decide we're just going to take this room. That does not happen. Ever. Would never, ever happen. Continue, sir.
I start giving the patient information to the staff there.
Okay, yeah, that one probably happened. Somebody does have to give the patient information to the staff. I'll give you that one, Brian.
I end up getting on top of him and cutting the shirt that he had on off, that white freedom shirt. And so I cut it off so they could get to him, so that I didn't articulate this to them, but I wanted to get that stuff off so they could put a defibrillator on him.
Sir, are you telling me that you brought your own scissors into the emergency room? You moved the staff out of the way because they would have already been surrounding the patient. You moved the staff out of the way to cut off a murder victim's clothing. First of all, that clothing is usually evidence. It needs to be bagged. Even as an ER nurse, I know this. You put it in a brown paper bag, chain of custody, the whole deal. You're telling me that staff just let you climb on top of Charlie and cut his shirt off. And you're also telling me you did it because you wanted the staff to have a place for the defibrillator pads. Sir, they do that. That's what they do every day. They are fully aware of how to cut a shirt off, and they really do not need you doing that, nor would they allow you to do that. I'm thinking his shirt was removed prior to arriving to the hospital because lots of reasons. But yeah, that shirt was gone. If Charlie even made it to the hospital, which I'm doubting, that shirt was not on his body when he was rolled through those doors. I would bet $100 on this, like easily. And I'd also like to add, he said something about I did that so I could they could put the defibrillators on him. I didn't articulate that to them at the time. Sir, you would not have had to articulate that to them at the time. The only reason you would even say that is if they were calling you out for your behavior in the middle of all of that stuff. They would call you out for your behavior. Like, why are you cutting this dude's shirt off? Like, get the F out of our way. So now you're trying to say that you were doing it for the defibrillator. You just didn't announce it. Okay, continue.
And so, and then started talking about pushing drugs. And so I was back and forth with them on drugs and defibrillator.
Oh, so you were running the code too. You were running the full ACLS protocol, were you, Brian? You were discussing the drugs with the doc and the defibrillation with the doc. How many joules was that, Brian? How many joules did you deliver those defibrillations at, Brian? What drugs did you advise the doctor that he should give the patient? I'm just curious. Like, just curious. Go on, Brian. Go on.
And so then, once you get that shirt cut off and moved out of the way, there's enough of medical professionals in there. And so I just want to get out of their way. And
the idea that you would do anything at all other than rush the guy to the hospital right out of the gate is suspicious. Why did you have to cut his shirt off? Like she said, that they would do that. It's almost like you had to cut the shirt off so you could take it, so it didn't end up in evidence.
So I got out of their way and walked out of the room.
Well, thank you for your service, Brian. Thank you for your service and taking care of that patient and keeping him alive until some staff could come in and take over for you. Thank you.
Walked out of the room and stood outside the room and held guard on the outside door of the room so nobody else could come in there.
I think what he meant to say there was they got sick of his behavior and made him wait in the hall. They kicked him out of the room and made him wait in the hall. He's lucky they didn't kick his ass all the way out to the parking lot. Like, no ER would ever put up, no matter who the patient was, no matter what level of celebrity the patient was, especially if it was a matter as sensitive as this, a crime scene, they would not be letting people in the room with the patient. Nope, not at all. They would get the patient information from you, and that is it. There would be no reason to have you in there. None whatsoever. And if you are impeding any care of that patient by climbing on top of him, let's just say, you would have been escorted out so fast of any ER I've ever worked in, and that's a lot. Makes zero sense. Brian Harpole is full of shit.
So there you have it. Very interesting testimony from Brian Harpole on that Sean Ryan podcast, whose real name isn't even Sean Ryan. But it's not like my real name is Dustin Roadgrimes, so I'm not talking trash. But in addition to all this, there's a lot that points to there being an explosion under Charlie's shirt. I can't show the slowed down footage, but a lot of people have been circulating the footage. I mean, a lot of people were there the day when it happened in public, so there's lots of footage. But his shirt puffs out, and you see something. You almost see the trajectory of the item like coming up this way into his neck. And a bullet that was shot would have caused far more damage. Far more. I mean, you can argue, like a lot of people are arguing that no, it wouldn't have. Yes, it would have. There would have been at least blood splatter from a bullet. You could maybe say that it wouldn't have decapitated him or been as violent and bloody as people want to say it is, but it would have been like a 30-06 caliber bullet to the neck would have done a lot more damage than whatever hit Charlie Kirk. I will tell you that without a doubt. And I'm not even a gun person. I just grew up with hunters. I don't even know that much, and I know that. There's countless videos of dudes shooting 30-06 bullets through like 3 to 5 frying pans, cast iron frying pans. A bullet just sailing through 3 to 5 cast iron frying pans. And you think that's all it's going to do to someone's neck? I'm sorry. I think that you're a very deluded person if you believe that. Okay, I'm not sorry. You're a very deluded person. Anyway, they hurried and paved over the crime scene too. That's the other thing that's suspicious and points to like some explosion, because when there's an explosion, there's residue all over everything, and it's very easy to detect. They moved the dirt out. It's like before anyone could test. And then you have these pieces of what looked like a burned shirt that Candace has been talking about on her show. And it's from the floor of the vehicle. So I've never seen a homicide where critical evidence is thrown away into the garbage. It would have been nice if the FBI kept Charlie's shirt as evidence and didn't allow it to be thrown away, but they did. They threw it in the garbage to hide the fact that it burned and it had pieces of the exploded mic. I have never seen this level of corruption in my entire life. And of course, there's a lot of people arguing against this and pretending, the influencers are out. The paid influencers are out in the comments in full stride. But, that's the world we live in. And honestly, I want to see, there's a lot of influencer cash being spent on going after Candace Owens. So just let's do a quick search. Let me just show you a quick cursory Twitter search on Candace Owens, what it produces right now. So this is the article we just discussed. This is her tweeting. Did Spain win? Good. I hope Spain wins. So look at this. I can't be the only one looking forward to Turning Point USA execs. So this is the Navy SEAL guy is saying that he thinks Candace is on the right track. Ben Shapiro's out here. Candace is an IQ test. He can't. These people can't. These people can't argue a point, so they have to. So they have to attack people personally. But this is like one of Candace's greatest tweets of all time. Anyway, you know where I stand on this. It's pretty obvious that there are some coordinated attacks being leveled against Candace Owens for noticing, which is a crime in 2026. But this is going to be our last story of the day. I'm getting pretty damn good at plotting these streams out so they're about 2 hours. So give me credit for that.
I'm really happy for you. I'm let you finish.
Anyway, the last story of the day is a little less political, a little more ass. And it involves women's sporting. And since we're talking about World Cup right now, we might as well talk about sports. I'm going to look up the score right now. Spain is up 1-0 after extra time today. Good. Spain won. Spain, it's official. Spain beat Argentina. Hold on a second. Let me share the news with you guys here. 1-0 after extra time today. Congratulations, Spain, for vanquishing what is probably one of the most hated teams in the FIFA, the Argentinian team. I think largely because of Messi, but I'm not a soccer guy. So congratulations, Spain. I love your politics. I've thought about moving to Spain on multiple occasions, so I'm very glad that you guys won. Congratulations. Back to our story. Back to the news. Back to the news, you guys. We got some real news here for you. And this photo just, it really uplifts my spirit for a lot of reasons. But it's girls with booty. How can you look at this photo and just not feel good about life? Just take that in for a moment and just, wow, isn't life beautiful? The girl on the left, just, oh man, that's art. But then the girl on the right is great too in her own light, just a little bit skinnier, a little bit more shapely, but it just makes you want to praise the Lord, a photo like that, And I just wanted to start this segment off with a breath of fresh ass. A breath of fresh ass. Breath of fresh air here. Because what's going on is they're trying to take our ass away from us. And I know, ladies, I know you appreciate this too, okay? Don't try to act like you don't, I'm not trying to take away like football players and their tight little skivvy outfits or whatever from you guys. But yeah. Do you think these athletes give one shit about current camera angles? That is a good question. Jules here asked this question. Do women care about camera angles? It doesn't look like they do. And why is he asking this question? Well, let me show you. Because of this. New broadcasting guidelines for women's athletics have been released to crack down on camera angles and slow motion replays that sexualize athletes. The guidelines highlight shots and broadcasters are urged to avoid. Now, when I see stuff like this, my initial response is like, okay, where is this coming from? Who's saying this? What's the source? Because everyone's trying to rage bait. Everyone's trying to make you mad and get you clicking. So this is from Dexerto, which I don't even know if it's a legitimate outlet, but it does quote a European official who I think is legitimate. So here's what the article claims. And the European Broadcasting Union, so not an American group, by the way. Thank you, America. We still have free ass here in America. European Broadcasting Union partnered with European Athletics to release new guidance for women's athletics coverage, with broadcasters urged to focus on performance and technical ability. The guidelines warn against lingering shots of athletes' bodies, low camera angles that capture revealing views, and slow motion replays that offer little technical or storytelling value. The sexualization of women athletes through selective camera angles and editing choices continues to be a significant concern across many sports broadcasts. Yes, it does, Glenn, said Glenn Killane, executive director of EBU Sports. It does because we need more of it, Glenn. Not for the reason you're thinking, buddy. So this is a European thing. But I think, to me, I ask the question, are these women being forced to dress this way? Are they do they get into there and they're like, hey, here's this lingerie. Here are these Daisy Dukes, put these on. Why do they wear the outfits they wear? Is it comfortable? Maybe they like people checking out their asses. I mean, I certainly like checking out their asses. So am I a giant pervert, or am I just biologically wired to be attractive to supple young ass that would make it for a good childbearing target? I apologize, people. I'm very sorry for this stream of consciousness sexualization here, but I think how the athletes themselves feel about this is important, because I think any athlete, male or female, is sexualized. That's kind of what having a great body does to you. It sexualizes you. And if you're an athlete, you probably have a great body, unless you play baseball, where you can be a fat dude and be sitting in the fucking dugout smoking a cigar, and then get up to bat like Babe Ruth and nail 50 hookers and drink whiskey. Whatever. No, I'm all for it. No disrespect, MLB guys. It takes athletic skill to play baseball. I'm joking. However, if you're an athlete, again, you exercise and you're in great shape, so you're sexy. It's part of the game. It's part of it's par for the course. And I ranted about this last week, but what's with all this anti-sex rhetoric going around? Have you read 1984? Are you part of the Junior Anti-Sex League? Are you a conservative Christian? Jesus wanted sex for one man and one woman. That's what I believe here in Europe. I'm from France. I believe Jesus created sex for one man and one woman. What the hell's going on, Europe? You're supposed to be the sexual freedom culture. France is like the people that have that go see their side piece at lunch break once a week. Like, they have a scheduled side piece day that the wife knows about. I love it. Good, France. That's how we should be. Stop being so Americans are so immature about sex, but Europe is apparently gunning for the crown here. So in light of this news, I want to close this out by showing you that one of my recent treats went viral again, and it is a treat. In fact, I think that's what we should start calling these, since X is not Twitter anymore, so now it's treats instead of tweets. So this is my tweet that went viral again against the backdrop of this European broadcasting news. So let me show you this. This is the original tweet. Let me translate this for you. This is in Arabic. Why is a beach volleyball player forced to reveal her buttocks? Sports in the West need a complete reset. To which I responded, where's my fucking response? This guy's like, get out of the West now. Where's my response? My response is one of the most important. Hold on. That's so crazy. So this is what's interesting about this. I'm going to show you this. Get out of the West now. Shut up. Alex Jones. Look at all these responses. God damn it. Well, the translation, why is beach volleyball? This is my response tweet, so you can see it in context, hopefully. This was my response tweet, which I'm surprised is not under the relevant category now, because look, I ratioed this person recently, 13K likes to 11K. And my tweet was, this was June 12th. Mine was, it was right after. Mine was June 12th too. But I recently, look at that, straight up ratio right there. So I don't understand why my tweet isn't under the relevant category. But I posted this as kind of like a fun response, right? This was kind of a fun response to the criticism. Oh, sports are too sexy now, right? And I'm an American, so I'm an American. So I believe in freedom of religion. That's honestly, to me, that's an American value, right? Like we do have as a culture in a country these values. And that freedom doesn't include your ability to force your religious nonsense on everyone else or me. And that goes for Muslims and Christians alike. And that includes abortion and forcing people to wear burqas during beach volleyball. You don't get to force your religion on me. That's what America's all about. The First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Son of a bitch. I read my pocket constitution. Both Christians and Muslims are on some moral crusade these days, some anti-sex moral crusade. And this is one of the aspects I despise about religion as a non-religious person. Sure, people should be responsible. They should control their sexual urges. You shouldn't screw little kids or your cousins or your mom's boyfriend or girlfriend or, your dad's, your stepmom, whatever. Unless you're doing a porno. Even then, sometimes shit happens. People have made connections. It's sexual attraction and biology is a weird, funny thing, isn't it? But this is a biological construct that exists in every single person. And sure, you got me. There are some asexual people, but you don't get to legislate your morality onto the rest of the world because everyone's situation is different. Everyone's sex drive is different. And it should be a personal choice, much like carrying a baby to term or getting a forced medical experiment by the government. These are all part of what America was founded on, personal choices that, hey, you may have a moral problem with my personal choices. And guess what? It's none of your fucking business, is it? Unless I'm doing something that's hurting someone else or violating someone else's rights. That's when it's your business. Now, Muslims don't like beach volleyball. Don't watch it. I don't like, going to church, so I'm not going to be there. You won't catch me in a mosque or a fucking synagogue or a church. Any of those places. I won't be there. Likewise, if you don't like beach volleyball games with chicks and thongs, don't show up to the games. That's what freedom's all about. The ability to make your own choices and live your own life. And, don't come out here and try to change the nature of a sport because it makes you uncomfortable. My hunch is that this effort is held by fat, angry women, but, that's for another time and another place. And I want to end off today by, as I was putting today's show together, I realized I have a pretty killer archive of bookmarks, just bookmarked articles from the vault. And I thought, it might be cool as a way to kind of like close out shows or just as a new segment. It doesn't have to be at the end necessarily, but Road Grimes bookmarks. And so I thought, as just an experiment, a little experiment before we end off today, we would try this. Let's go into my bookmarks and see what beautiful, beautiful things I have here for you in my bookmarks. Now, I'm not going to show you my sex bookmarks. That's for another time and another place. But these are my politics bookmarks. And let's just look at some of these. These are going way back. Cable news ad revenue up 25% over 2017 with MSNBC's rate. That was after Trump got elected. Rich John Reagan and big oil. Let's see with the crisis of confidence. You know what? I think there's a Candace one in here. Let's do Candace today. You guys are all going, what's in the sex bookmarks? I will tell you, there is an article in there about how squirting is actually peeing, just to give you an idea what's in the sex. There's one about gas station erection pills too. So a lot of good content in the sex bookmarks, but There may or may not be some midget porn links in there that I don't want to share with y'all. I'll just keep that aspect of my life to myself for now until I run for office. Okay, here we go. We got Jimmy Dore, journalism's gatekeepers. Interesting. What is that? That might be a good one. There's a Candace one in here. There it is. Candace. So here we go. This is the one we're gonna do for today. We're gonna go with Candace Owens content today from my bookmarks. So this is an article from The Sun from 2021, 5 years ago. Cry some more. Candace Owens blasts cowardly Dems for drama over Capitol riot, says U.S. is being run by toddlers in tiaras. You gotta love Candace Owens. Let's keep going. Candace Owens has blasted the cowardly Democrats. So let's see what we got here. These are some of the photos from January 6th. Democrats in Congress are about as cringe as it gets. Their over-the-top dramatization of January 6th made it apparent to governments in the East that our country is being run by toddlers in tiaras. They are cowards that nobody respects within or outside of America. Putin called January 6th the stroll. It wasn't for Ashley Babbitt, but yeah, the reaction made the U.S. look like the weakest it's ever been. Now, whenever I talk about January 6th, I always point out how I was on a conference call with a bunch of Europeans, and the French lady was like, oh, it's like the yellow vest, but they didn't actually do anything. So she kind of like low-key just called Americans pussies. And Candace apparently was on that page, and I don't know why I bookmarked this article, but I'm very glad that I did. But let's keep going. Democrats, never forget January 6th. The rest of the adult world, cry some more. Owens wrote on Twitter on Sunday afternoon. She wrote, Democrats in Congress are about as cringe as it gets. So we already read that. They are cowards nobody respects. Owens shared her thoughts in response to journalist Mike Cernovich's tweet regarding Putin called January 6th the stroll. It wasn't for Ashley Babbitt. But yeah, the reaction made the U.S. look the weakest it's ever been. Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021 to protest the presidential election result, leading to the deaths of 5 people. Okay, this is the shit that drives me up a wall, because the deaths of 5 people had nothing to do with the riot. Does it go to a store about this? Let's. Do we want to go down this rabbit hole? Okay. Let's take this sidebar while we're doing this. Horrific scene. Who was shot at the Capitol? How many people died? Hundreds. Okay. I want to see what they say here. Her husband spoke to Ashley Babbitt was shot. So we know Ashley Babbitt. Ashley Babbitt was the one person who legitimately died during January 6 riots. He said that Ashley Babbitt was a keen Trump supporter. Interesting. The only person who died was a Trump supporter. Metropolitan Police Department Chief Robert J. Conti confirmed a woman had been shot dead by a Capitol police officer. So that's the one. One witness to the shooting claimed she was shot by police. Graphic clip. How many people died in the Capitol? So that's the one person. The headline says 5 people died. How many people died? At least 4 people died in the riots. Aside from the woman who was shot, police say 3 others were killed in what was described as medical emergencies. Killed in what was described as medical. So again, this is such terrible propaganda. I love going back and revisiting this trash, because now they're doing this to Democrat protesters. Now ICE protesters are being treated like this. Let's go back to the king. In a follow-up tweet, Owens added, Democrats never forget January 6th. The rest of the adult world cries. Then the 31-year-old conservative author whose book Blackout, How Black America Can Make It Second Escape from the Democratic Plantation was released in 2020, compared the Capitol riot to a modern Reichstag fire last month. And oh my God, was she right? She has been proven infinitely correct on this, which I think she's going to be, and she's going to be proven correct on the Tyler Robinson thing too, but I digress. She also previously dubbed the Capitol riots to be the Democrats' strategy to assume all power. I don't disagree. On Friday, Owens poked fun at the 78-year-old president after he made a gaffe in his primetime COVID speech. During Biden's vaccine eligibility speech, the president referred to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, mostly known as the CDC, as the CD, and most people are fully vaccinated. The CD will continue to provide additional guidance on what you can do in the workplace. As his speech came close to a close, viewers rushed to social media to make comments on how Biden did. One user wrote, Biden only made it 23 minutes and took no questions. So this was back when they were caping for demented Biden. Owens retweeted his comment, adding her own opinion on why the president was only on stage for less than 30 minutes. That's because he's a victim of elder abuse, Owens wrote. America's senile in chief, brought to you by mail-in ballots. It comes just days after Owens mocked blue and non-believers who think Donald Trump fans have occupied Washington, D.C. and say Biden is the most popular president. I gotta say, Candace Owens from the archive was nailing it back in, what year was this? 2020. 2021, actually. 13th of March, 2021 is when that article was published. So I think this is going to be a recurring segment, Road Grimes Bookmarks, Bookmark It. And thank y'all for sticking with me through today's episode. 151. You know, sometimes I look at my subscriber base. Sometimes I look at my following or how many videos I posted, and I think, man, I'm not doing that great. And then I realize I've only done 150 episodes. You know, I'm doing pretty solid despite the censorship and all the shit that goes on in the internet online world. And the fact that I only do a show once a week and I'm a nobody. You know, someone like Tim Dillon who Rose or Joe Rogan, they're out doing stand-up comedy. So they're doing other, you know, they're getting lift from like Joe Rogan's and so on. And I've definitely gotten some elevation from Jimmy Dore and people like Katie Halper, some of the other like online left-leaning podcasters. But, you know, I've been steadily grinding at it, doing this weekly show. And I just want to thank you again for sticking with me and listening to me on my soapbox. Please jump in and correct me if I'm incorrect about anything. And I hope you enjoyed today's discussion. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done that already. I'm getting close to that 1,000 mark. I've always said once I get to the monetization point, I'll probably like take my glasses off. But for now, I like doing it with the glasses and the hat. I like the kind of it's almost like a character, right? To get into. But also, you know, I've said this before, with the lighting and everything, I have a bald head. You know, I'm not trying to hide that I'm bald. I shave my head. It's a lot of guys my age do. So I'm not trying to Tim Pool it or anything. You know, I'm not afraid to admit that I'm bald. I just like the aesthetic and the ease of, you know, not having to like worry about what my eyes look like or smoke a lot of weed on stream. So, you know how it is. Anyway, thank you again, one and all, for sticking with me and for tuning in. I got mad love for y'all, and we will see you next week as usual. And let's take you out today with something. I already kind of gave you something funny, so I'm going to give you my favorite Arnold clip on the way out. And I love y'all. We'll see you next week.
I'm a stud. I'm ballsy. I don't take no shit from anyone. I smoke my stogie anywhere I want. I don't have to find a hideout place like you.